Hi, this is Module 5, Understanding My Community of Central Heights. First of all, we're located between the towns of Richmond, Princeton, Lane, and Rantoul, Kansas. It's a consolidated school district that was consolidated in the 60s. All of these towns are working class communities. Many see Princeton as rich, which when we look at the numbers here in a second, that seems kind of ironic. And then people see Rantoul as the poorest of people, which the data also doesn't support. But that's kind of the feeling throughout the district in the 5 years I've been there. That's the feeling I've always gotten. We're a very conservative school district, like much of Kansas. It's a rural community, and production ag is probably the biggest industry within our district. School gives these communities something to bond over. Back in the 60s, there was a lot of strife on when they consolidated all the school districts. However, now it's something that we kind of bond over. Each one of the towns have mayors, county commissioners, school board members, and volunteers. So they're all represented in our school board as well. Each community has some representation there. There has been tension years ago between the school board and school staff. About 2006, there was probably somewhere around 30 to 40% turnover on jobs for teachers. So there's a lot of teachers that have been teaching in our district now for about 12, 13 years. Our current tensions tend to relate to acceptance and tolerance of diversity within our school. There's not much racial or ethnic diversity. Our customs and traditions. Our people work very hard and show a lot of pride in their work. There are a few people who are looking for charity, but when there's a need for charity, we have a lot of charitable people that will donate to that. We have a high percentage of students that don't seek further education after high school. Actually, a shockingly high amount of kids each year will go straight into the workforce. People tend to want to stay in or come back to our community. The kids tend to love where they grew up. We're a typical rural Midwestern lifestyle for most families, and we have very little racial diversity. And although probably the top belief is probably the Christian belief, it's not necessarily that we have a lot of people who are practicing Christians and regularly in a worship service, but Christianity is probably the number one religion. We're a 3A school in 2015 and 16, and next school year, so 2020, 2021 school year, will be a 1A school. It's been a major group of people that have moved away throughout the last 5-6 years, and our school's gotten smaller because of it. Also, there's people who live in the district who are going to other schools because of more opportunities there in larger schools. Like Ottawa tends to be the one that most of the kids leave to go to. Our largest youth organizations in our school is FFA, and within the community is 4-H. We don't handle change very well at all, and I'll talk more about that later on in this presentation. Other traditions that happen in our school that are very important to most every student and a lot of parents is prom, Richmond Free Fair, which is a fair that happens during the summer in Richmond. I think it's on like year 95 straight now. And then the Lane Fair also has a little 2-day fair as well. Sporting events tend to bring our community together regardless of how good or poor the team is. There's usually a large crowd to watch them. And then our FFA auction that we have every November gets a very high attendance each year to come out and sponsor our FFA chapter. Some of our population characteristics, I'll hit on some of the highlights of it. Since I do have 4 towns I got to talk about. Richmond has the highest population, 461. Rantoul's the smallest population. Continue on here. Our unemployment is a little bit higher than average, and we have a relatively young community in Princeton, relatively old community in Lane. And then as far as money or income each year, Lane actually probably, it looks like Lane and Rantoul are the highest salaried people. And the lowest end is, I believe, at Princeton, which is actually backwards to what popular belief is. Our communication channels include School Reach, Facebook, Twitter, school website. Newspapers are the Anderson County Review out of Garnett and the Ottawa Herald out of Ottawa. We have a local radio station, KOFO, in Ottawa, and most people get their televised news from Kansas City. Our known community groups, we have a strong youth sports organization through Princeton, 4-H clubs, but every town has one. Churches and youth groups. We actually have a youth group that hosts a fifth quarter for all kids after football games in the fall. And then Richmond and Lane Ruitans, they're an organization that does a lot of civil service and community engagement activities. Within our school, we have FFA, Key Club, Spanish Club, Robotics, Bible Club, which is a student-organized club that meets before school, 4 Club, which goes hand in hand with Rachel's Challenge, if you've ever heard of that, and then FCCLA, FBLA Student Council, and then our teachers have Site Council and Building Leadership Team. As far as our leadership, each town has an elected mayor. Lane and Richmond both have active Ruitans that are very engaged within our community. We have several strong churches. Our superintendent's been here for 5 years and is retiring in June, so we'll be looking for a new superintendent. We actually, I think, had 17 applicants, which was way more than expected. We have 3 building level administrators, and then we have 7 Board of Education members. And then unique for us is that Mark Samsel is a cancer representative from Wellsville, nearby Wellsville, and he spends a lot of time coming to Central Heights events and is very active in our community. We don't have a whole lot of industry leaders because we just don't have a whole lot of industry in our district. Most of our people travel out of district for work, but the ones that we do have are definitely willing to help. But the key is you have to ask them. We work with the Ruitans for our Civic Engagement Day. Generally, all people within our district are willing to help, but once again, they have to be asked, whether it's in person or over the phone. They'll lend a helping hand, but they're not going to take the initiative to come seeking to help. And then our community members enjoy presenting at our secondary level career day. Economic conditions, agriculture is the biggest industry, but we do have several very large family farm operations that employ laborers, including parents and students of some of my parents and even some of my students for work studies. There are other industries we have that are very popular for our community members to work at is QSI, which they build sheds, Sensor One, also Midwest Columns in Richmond. And then a lot of people travel out of district to go to Ottawa to work at Walmart Distribution Center, American Eagle Outlet, and Midwest Cabinets. Household income is listed here. The high end is Rantoul. The low end is Richmond. State average is $56,422. I personally believe the Rantoul number is probably inflated due to taking the salary of people who live outside of the town. I think if you found data for just in the city limits, it would be really low. The unemployment rate, for instance, is 4.78, which is slightly higher than the state average. And our home values is also something I think is a little skewed. It says my data came up with 84,000 on the high end to 71,000 on the low end, and the state average of 150,600. I think if you look at town houses in the city limits, they're going to be relatively low. If you look at town houses outside the country, very few of them sell for less than 180 to 200,000. And then we have 13.23% of people living in poverty between the 4 towns, which is extremely high. Our school board, our political structure, our school board, and most of our community members are very conservative, Republican. Our negotiation team that is affiliated with KNEA has had tensions with school board because of political and fiscal differences. A few years ago, a large majority of teachers voted to start our own local teachers union to get away from KNEA in hopes of being able to work more efficiently with our school board. The vote passed, but then was overturned in Topeka due to not meeting a quorum. Our school board definitely supported us doing that, and it would have been good for our district and our negotiations. Known social tensions. Teacher contracts are always it's very common to have tensions over teacher negotiations. Most people believe that that's due to the fact that teaching is probably one of the highest paid jobs you can get within our school district. Tensions around acceptance of homosexuality has been present over the last 2 years. Our community and many of our students are very conservative in their views on this, and we've got a growing population of students and some staff members who are very vocal on their views, being the exact opposite of the majority of people. Central Heights prides itself on not having very many cliques. Students in the lunchroom sit with different groups every day. It's not very cliquey at all. We have racial and ethnic discrimination is not present. And then our causes of some of this tension is change in our community, and our community culture has changed, and we don't take change very well. We've had a group of very outspoken people, especially when in the topic of homosexuality, that demanded acceptance and belittled anyone that stood in their way, and that was probably not the best tactic. Extra sources of information. We have school board minutes on our school website, quarterly newsletter, school records, Franklin County Health Office, Audubon Gardette Chamber of Commerce, and then the United Way of Franklin County Association. Power structures, definitely different definitely different views are present, but everyone seems to want what is best for our community and our school. All people in position of power, including our school leadership, is very approachable and easily accessible. Multicultural issues. Not much cultural diversity or racial or ethnic diversity within our communities, but I think we would be accepting of that if it was present, or if the opportunity presented itself. We have clear expectations of our students academically. Probably our biggest problem has been truancy over the last 5 years, and that our current administration is dealing with that, and it has gotten better. We have clear dress code expectations, and kids tend to follow them for the most part. And we have a school culture committee made up of teachers that do little activities and giveaways to help people keep morale up in our school, help everybody keep their love for Central Heights. Our power structure, political tension doesn't seem to be very strong, because for the most part, all people involved with our school want what's best for our students. Public opinion. So our secondary level administration, our principal and vice principal, they're in their second year, and they've had some backlash from students and parents over the changes they've made. The previous administration had been in place for over 15 years. They were a little bit more lax, and so there was, once again, our district doesn't deal well with change, and so they were criticized quite a bit last year. Overall, the public opinion is getting better and stronger this year, much more positive. Student apathy tends to be a problem here, just simply not caring how we do, whether it be on sports or testing or whatever activity you want to talk about. Apathy seems to be a big problem, but it has slowly been improving as the new administration's been addressing it. And then decreased enrollment is probably the biggest concern, and we're still struggling to solve that problem. Public opinion surveys, we started doing student-led conferences, which has opened the door for us to be able to get more of the public opinion and to do some of those surveys. Thank you.